Hello everyone, welcome to Starscream's Ghost, a Transformers podcast, your episode-by-episode podcast guide through the classic Transformers Generation 1 cartoon and now the Japanese Headmaster continuity. I am Jeremy Graves. I am joined by my good friend Mr. Andy Hanley, as we are embarking today on episode 26 of Transformers Headmasters, that being with the title, I Risk My Life for Earth. Now, quick little bit of clarification, folks, in case you didn't hear the last podcast. The reason we're only doing one episode today is because in our last podcast, we only did one episode on that as well. All going well from our next podcast, which should be available in a few weeks' time from date of publishing. We'll be back to 2 episodes as usual. But before we go any further, if you are a first-time listener, thank you very much for checking out the show. We hope you enjoy it. We've been talking through all of Transformers Headmasters so far, so you might want to go back into the archives to catch up on what's been discussed thus far. But we've got another pretty big episode to talk about, so I'm not going to be on the housekeeping too much today. But I will say, if you're joining us on your podcast platform of choice, or if you're watching the video version on our YouTube channel, of which, hi YouTube, hope you're doing alright, thank you very much for joining us today. If you want to find us on Twitter and Instagram, we are at StarscreamsPod. And all the episodes of Transformers that we are discussing on this podcast run, we are watching from the UK DVD set from circa 2004-2005, which if you're watching the video version of this podcast, I am pointing at right now. That is the translations that we are following. We are specifically watching it in Japanese with English subtitles because, Andy, I think it's fair to say, at some point in time, we might delve into the odd bit of the English dub, but for now, no.
Yeah, I bet best served in small, very small doses for comedy value is my take on that.
There we go. But good sir, how are you doing today? Are you ready to talk about episode 26? Any other lingering thoughts from episode 25? Seeing now that, quite frankly, Galvatron's dead. Any other thoughts?
No, yeah, Galvatron remains dead. Yeah, I'm ready to risk my life for this podcast, I guess.
You sound so convincing when you say that.
About as convincing as Chrome Dome.
There you go. You know what then? Let's not waste any more time on this, as it were. Let's dive straight into episode 26 of Transformers Headmasters, I Risk My Life for Earth. We begin on planet Char with the narrator saying the following. After Galvatron's demise, Scorponok takes control of the Decepticons. He chooses the name Great Emperor of Dread. Which is fantastic, Andy.
It is pretty good. Like, I do feel like he probably... This is like when you go to sign up to, like, a social media network and somebody's already taken your username. Like, I feel like he probably typed, like, Emperor of Destruction. He's like, this name is already taken. It's like, Emperor of Dread, I guess? Like, if I can't do Destruction, then Dread, maybe. So, yeah. But it's still a good strong name. Good Xbox Live username, Scorponok. Well,
good gamer tag.
Yeah.
We then see Scorponok addressing his Decepticon followers, saying, quote-unquote, Galvatron, Emperor of Destruction, tried to build the Decepticon Empire. He died in the attempt. We must remember that and combine all your strength to combat the Autobots. Now is the time to expand the Decepticon Empire in honor of Lord Galvatron's memory. I proclaim, we shall become an empire of dread and rule the universe. Good opening speech, Andy.
Yeah, pretty good. But I mean, it is actually a really interesting speech because he both kind of like plays down like Galvatron's importance, but also plays it up of like, oh, do this for him, and like it's a really kind of weaselly double-edged sword of just like, who cared about that guy really, but also just like using him as the sort of, you know, as the martyr for what is to come. And it's like, yeah, that's like actually a really good like Scorponok / Zarak speech for just playing both sides like that.
You're not wrong, actually. And I'm sort of wondering in the back of my brain if maybe Six Shot said, hey, look, people were kind of a little bit skeptical of you. Maybe kind of, you know, mention let's do this for Galvatron so people think you've changed.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think even without kind of requiring that, like, he kind of knows that, you know, he has his loyal troops, and more generally, like, I think he was certainly being treated with suspicion by other Decepticons, you know, again, I was sort of like Statler and Waldorf of Cyclonus and Scourge were maybe, you know, they for all of their kind of griping, they were probably like Galvatron loyalists, and I think had push come to shove, there would have been a definite kind of split down the middle of who would have followed who. And so it kind of makes sense to hedge your bets in this moment and not just to barrel forward with like, hey, well, I'm in charge now. And it's very much his style. Like, had it been the other way around, Galvatron would have probably, you know, put anyone who even thought about defying him to the sword instantly. Whereas, you know, this is a far more thoughtful and kind of cunning way of going about things, which is very Scorponok.
As the speech concludes, we see that Counterpunch is leaving this area where everyone is congregated. He transforms into Punch, oddly, because he's still on the Decepticon planet, but then contacts the Autobots, and we're told by the narrator that at this point, they are all gathered on planet Athenia. We then get a quick scene on Athenia at Autobot HQ of the Autobots reacting to the news of Scorponok now being the leader once again, and also conveniently remind us, the viewer, that Highbrow is still working on deciphering the code to Scorponok's weakness. Did you remember that plot point, everybody? Because it feels like we've not thought about it for a few episodes now. And that we are to assume he has still been plugging away at that in the background over the past few episodes. Back on Char, Scorponok is now talking with Sixshot, saying, quote-unquote, "The death of Ultra Magnus on Earth has changed the game. Now is the chance to defeat them once and for all." Sixshot responds with, "That's the spirit. Leave it to me," and then disappears like a ninja. Then Scorponok continues, "Now, you guys," pointing at the Decepticon headmasters, "let's continue with our strategy for complete victory on Earth." As the dialogue continues, we get hints that the headmasters actually want to fight the Autobots, and they're maybe getting a little bit bored and rusty with their skills and such. But Scorponok emphasizes to them that, don't worry, your time to fight will come, but adds, quote-unquote, "The Pacific strategy is the final grand strategy, but we need to proceed with extreme caution. You're the only two I can trust." And he says that, Andy, despite there being 3 headmasters in front of him, but that's beside the point.
It's like, how many fingers am I holding up right now, Scorponok?
Back on Athenia, we see that the Autobots are studying the Decepticons' recent movements, something that we saw them trying to do in the last episode as well. Noting that the Northern Hemisphere has seen a lot of activity of late. Chrome Dome is preparing to head to Earth to help with the reinforcements of defences and such in that area, when Spike then just announces, "I'm going to the planet too, to attend a planning meeting," quote-unquote, which is a summit concerning Earth's volcanoes, it turns out. Spike says, "It's to shed light on the secrets of Mount Russo." Chrome Dome responds with, "Perfect, you can come with me." Fortress says, "Are you going alone, Chrome Dome?" Chrome Dome says, "Don't worry, I can manage." And that's when I immediately thought, oh no. And even Fortress's reaction is to sort of grab his chin, sort of stroke it a little bit and just go, in that sound of, he knows something's about to happen. We then see the train bots carrying Chrome Dome and Spike as they depart for Earth, where we then get the following quite curious information, Andy, about the planet Earth from the narrator, along with some diagrams on screen. Which, this perplexed me, but so be it. "Earth is like a hard-boiled egg," says the narrator.
Always a good start to the comparison point, by the way.
"The thin shell on the outside is the crust, the hardened egg white is the mantle, and the yolk is the core. This meeting is about drilling into the mantle in order to reveal all its secrets."
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's never gone badly in fiction before, like drilling into the core of the Earth. Always a good idea. See, I would have really liked it if they'd have had this sort of like diagram of an egg, and then it had just like zoomed out to like Spike just eating a hard-boiled egg. He just like slices the top off of that and just like digs in. It would have been a really good setup. But sadly, they did not. This did feel like one of those moments where, I forget what the last one of these we had was in this series, where it's like somebody suddenly whispers in the writer's ears, it's like, can you just do something educational? Because like we want the parents to feel like their kids are actually learning something and not just watching look, you've killed a lot of robots, and the parents are asking questions, so we need some educational value. And it's like, I don't know, let's teach them about volcanoes and like the Earth and its molten core. It's like, yeah, cool. Just put a diagram of that in, and then maybe we can, we can add this to like replying to all these letters of complaint that like you've killed my son's favorite Transformer this week, and then maybe it'll help.
Mate, you killed my son's favorite Transformer. Make him learn something.
Yes, yeah. It's like,
I think of this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so maybe then I can like buy him like, I don't know, a geology set rather than another Transformer to replace the one that you murdered. But yeah, there's definitely it's this show has done this a couple of times of just like, yep, educational value time. And it's like, cool, okay, here we go.
I feel like it might have happened in the Beehive episode, or the one where there were the two, like the battle with the defense of the false planet, or whatever it was.
Yeah,
and it was kind of an explanation with the one where they were trying to open up that pyramid, and it was revealed, oh yeah, someone screwed up the ecosystem. That's why it's now a desert.
Yeah, well, because there was also, was it about like solar power? There was something that Daniel asked a really stupid question of just like, solar power comes from the sun, and they're like, yes, the sol in solar means sun. That was definitely one of them. It was like Daniel's stupid question corner. But yeah, we've definitely had a.
It was the pirate ship, wasn't it? It was because I think that was solar powered.
Maybe it was that. Which Daniel has asked so many stupid questions; it's hard to keep track at this point. So
he's also done a lot of stupid things as well.
Exactly.
Moving forward a tad now, Spike's studies reveal an unexpected coincidence, and this is after we have seen him for literally 4 or 5 seconds in the context of the show as us, the viewer, of being in a room full of other scientists who look like they couldn't have given less of a damn about this conversation about volcanoes. But there's an unexpected coincidence. All of Scorponok's movements have been centered around the Pacific Ridge, or as the TF Wiki notes it, the Pacific Ring of Fire, the largest concentration of volcanoes on Earth, which runs from Alaska to the South Pole. We then go back to Autobot City, and Spike explains that he thinks the Decepticons are targeting the spot where the Earth's crust is the weakest. But in the middle of talking about all of this, Andy, Trypticon suddenly appears and attacks.
Yep, he sure does. And which, by the way, leading the way to, this is another pretty well animated episode. Like, this has some really good action scenes in it, and the scene to follow is definitely like one of those of like, oh yeah, surprisingly they didn't really feels like they didn't put a whole lot of budget into blowing Galvatron up and like burying him under ice, but this episode it feels like they went for it. They swung for the fences a little bit more.
That's one thing I actually meant to mention earlier, is that when Scorponok is like addressing his followers and also Six Shot in private, the animation of Scorponok, like in his Zarak form, it's really like a just a grade above everything else that we've seen. Even his mouth movements were like, is this in HD? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, which again is kind of surprising for that scene, because I mean this show's always been quite happy to like throw a bunch of time at like, action sequences and the big fight scenes, and obviously we've got like, transformation sequences that are going to be reused. But yeah, that was a particularly noteworthy one for me, because it's just like, it's just a guy talking. This is usually the stuff that you kind of cheap out on, because it's just like talking heads, doesn't really matter. But I mean, maybe this was part of the like, we really want to sell people on the Scorponok toy, because it feels like, yeah, whenever he's on screen, it's like he kind of gets a good bit of love from the animators.
So Metroplex begins trying to hold off the attack of Trypticon, but then Six Shot arrives, and Chromedome, recalling the death of Ultra Magnus at the hands of Six Shot, engages him in battle. At this point, Andy, I knew something significant was likely about to happen, because we suddenly had a brand new up-tempo insert song with lyrics that weren't subtitled. And I just thought, oh god, what's going to happen now for like the 3rd episode in a row? You can't keep doing this.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, this one kind of slightly less high stakes as it turns out, but also another really good insert song. Like this show has some bangers when it wants to drop a new song in there, and I'm like, I very much appreciate that.
Metroplex is distracted by my note actually write down is distracted by this, and I don't mean the insert song. I actually meant by like the attack of Six Shot appearing.
I mean that would be great if the song was actually. I think we had this discussion with the last insert song. If it was like diegetic and it was like actually someone was there singing it, and it was just like full Macross or something. It's like, oh no, they're singing a song again. That means something important's going to happen.
Twincast is blaring out over his speakers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that actually would be really great if it was just like, Twincast. It just starts with him just like hitting play, and then the insert song kicks in.
That's how something an 80s cartoon would do, though, in America.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
Man. Yeah, I demand to be allowed to like remake this episode specifically because I feel like I've got some really good ideas for like directorial flourishes.
So there's lots of laser fire going on and such, and Metroplex is distracted by the fact that Chrome Dome is now fighting Six Shot. And as Trypticon is still trying to pummel Metroplex, there's like a random laser shot, I think from Metroplex's gun if memory serves. And Spike, despite the fact he was trying to offer his services in battle, and Chrome Dome basically going, dude, shut up, stay inside. You can't help in this battle. Spike decides he can help, and tries to assist his comrades by going, no, wait, you're about to be struck by a laser. Except the laser hits the ground, there's kind of an explosion, and that sends Spike flying into the air and just knocked out. The train bots come out, and they're like, we'll help you. And then Metroplex is effectively going like, no, help Spike. To which I think one of the train bots is like, Spike? Where's Spike? Looks around, looks at the ground and goes, oh no! And then picks him up, and we're told that he's then taken to Athenia for urgent medical attention. A lot happens in this, Andy, but in a weird way, I'm going to sound very callous now, this is Spike's fault.
I mean, yes, it is. And I mean, this is not kind of the first time that he's gotten involved with this. But like, it's also like, it works really well as kind of a moment. I mean, it's sort of, again, one of the things that I appreciate that this series does that Transformers generally, I don't know, I guess Spike almost died in like season 2 and they made him an Autobot for like a hot minute. But like, you know, generally speaking, humans kind of get to just like hang around in the middle of these battles, and there's not a negative outcome from it. And it's like we can reset the camera. It's 0 days since the last like human Autobot accident, I guess. But like this sort of made sense as just like, this is a really messy battle. There's a lot of stuff going on. Not really the place for an like defenseless human to be hanging about. And yeah, of course it goes bad. And it sets up some interesting kind of stakes around, you know, Chrome Dome, etc. that we'll get into. Which, you know, he decides it's his fault. As we've mentioned, clearly not. Clearly Spike's fault. But no, this is like quite, again, this heads in quite a dark direction as things stand generally for this kind of series.
As you mentioned, Chrome Dome begins blaming himself for the fact that Spike got injured. We get the dialogue exchange from a few people, with Chrome Dome starting out with, forgive me saying this to Daniel, I was his escort, and this happened. Daniel, clearly trying to hold his own, is just like, it's not your fault, Chrome Dome. And then Wheelie chimes in and just says, yes, it is! It's unreasonable to make Daniel's dad fight the Decepticons! Which, you know what? I agree.
Yeah, I mean, he's both very right and very not, because it's like, that's not really Chrome Dome's problem. But also, he is entirely correct. And I mean, maybe he should have turned up right at the start of season 1 to mention this to Optimus Prime and being like, by the way, maybe you shouldn't have all these humans hanging out with you, because while I appreciate they may be useful from an informational point of view, like, a lot of, in every continuity, like, bad things happen. I mean, good grief, like, the G1 comic continuity, like, goes some places with Spike and etc. getting caught up in things. So, like, yeah, maybe Wheelie should have been here right at the start, just to be like, no, don't make the humans do this stuff. Like, this is bad.
The conversation continues with Chrome Dome saying, in response to Wheelie, it's true. I'm really sorry. And then Wheelie pipes up again and goes, an apology is not enough!
Like, what else do you want, Wheelie, at this point in time? Jesus Christ.
Just then, Fortress enters the room where everyone is waiting to inform him on Spike's condition. A small piece of shrapnel has become embedded in one of the arteries inside Spike and cannot be removed by surgery. Obviously, Daniel doesn't take this news well because, quite frankly, he's had enough trauma over his lifetime of being involved with Transformers. And he immediately runs to go and see his dad, with Carly trying to catch up to him. His guilt mounting at this point, Chrome Dome says the following to Fortress. Commander, your strategy was flawed. If we attacked the Decepticon base on Earth, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to infiltrate their base and crush them. Chrome Dome tries to leave, but is restrained and calmed down by his fellow Headmasters. We then see a group debate about Scorponok's strategy, with Highbrow speculating that he's attempting to make the Earth combust into a new sun, rather than simply just blowing up the planet like we saw them do with Cybertron and Mars earlier in the series. At this point, we get a report beamed in from Scattershot, per the TF Wiki, that the Decepticons are active on the, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, Andy, the Kamchatka Peninsula. I'm just going to call it probably the Peninsula from now on, folks, because I'm going to murder that pronunciation each time. But it is another portion of the Pacific Ring of Fire we mentioned earlier. As Chrome Dome begins to leave, Fortress then says, "Stop. Stay here, Chrome Dome." Chrome Dome responds with, "Why?" "You're not leading the mission." Chrome Dome responds with, "Why not?" Fortress adds, "You can't assess situations in your emotional state. You can't command. Brainstorm will take charge instead. I still have things to do. It's in your hands," he says, pointing to Brainstorm. Chrome Dome is obviously less than impressed by this development. Then, Andy, we go to the medical bay, and we see that Spike and Daniel are having a tearful moment together. And if we know anything about Spike in this series, in this particular series, he tries to kind of play hardball with Daniel a little bit. Tries to give him tough love of how to deal with situations. Like the episode where it looked like he was going to have to remain on Earth, and he wasn't going to be allowed to go home again. And Spike was the greatest, worst dad in the world in how he handled that situation. The following dialogue exchange takes place while Spike is laying, arguably, on his deathbed, and Daniel is just kind of standing nearby, trying to be a strong son. Daniel starts by going, "Dad! Dad!" And Spike says, "I'm going to try and recreate the voice I did in that episode as well, Andy. So, Daniel, I'm glad to see you've become so strong." "Dad!" Daniel's got tears dropping down his eyes at this point. "Whatever happens to me, don't let it break you." "Dad, don't say that." "Take my place and work with your mother as Earth's envoy to the Autobots. Agreed?" "Dad!" "Daniel, this is no time for tears. You must show your strength in a time of crisis." "Dad!" "Strong men don't cry." Daniel is now crying profusely. "I'm not crying. I'm not crying, Dad." Spike then just responds by nodding and saying, "You're not crying." And then Spike begins to wince in pain. And then you hear Daniel go, "Dad, are you alright?" And then Spike responds with, "Don't worry. I won't die." And then Daniel responds with, "Be strong, Dad. Dad! Dad!" This scene, Andy, I don't know how to process this.
It's a very clunky attempt at like an emotional moment. I mean, to be fair, like my brain went into the stratosphere at the idea of Daniel being like Earth's envoy in, like across the galaxy. It's like, oh no, like if there's one fate worse than death for Spike, it's the idea that like Daniel will have to like represent the Earth to the entire universe. Like surely there's somebody else, like Carly maybe. But yeah, I don't know. It's maybe it works better in the original Japanese. I don't know. Maybe it just does not translate well. But it's a strange old back and forth. But bless. And I do like this. The like specificity of like what is wrong with Spike, like because usually again cartoon show for kids it's normally just like, oh, something bad has happened, like he's gravely injured, and they normally just like leave it at that. But like it's a very specific like, oh yeah, there's like shrapnel in an artery, and it's like, man, this is like an episode of Casualty. This isn't, you know, this is, you know, Holby City / Autobot City. And it's like, oh, I kind of appreciate that they're actually, they've put some effort and thought into this rather than just be like generic, you got injured in battle. So it does, you know, it feels kind of quite grown up in that sense.
Also, quick sidebar. I appreciate I said envoy. I don't know why. I think I've read it like en route, but then for some reason said it wrong. So that aside.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to... What's the way to phrase this? So I'm wondering if this is maybe a cultural thing, Andy. Because, again, this is... I mean, when did this episode air? 5th of February, 1988, according to the TF Wiki. I wonder if maybe that's just like a cultural thing relating maybe to how people were told to try and just basically be a parent to their child, like, don't show weakness kind of thing. And you could arguably say that's a thing that was very prevalent probably a good 15, 20 years ago here in the UK as well, and arguably probably still now in some places. But I do wonder if that's maybe a cultural difference as to why it comes across in that way. Because it does feel very blunt and direct. And thinking about kind of older anime, you know, we've both seen, you do occasionally get things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, it is, yeah, like, you know, the British equivalent is the whole, like, stiff upper lip thing. So, yeah, like, kind of as a sort of product of its time, you know, even just the phrase of just, like, real men don't cry, like, that was kind of the 80s vibe of, you know, like, emotional and mental health of, like, if you're a guy, well, you're not allowed to cry. So, like, that stuff all makes sense. I think it's just that the exchange itself is just a very clunky way of putting that across. And I suspect it probably feels a little bit smooth, like in its original native language, and maybe just doesn't quite translate all that solidly. But yeah, like I think it's the sentiment is there, and it's kind of like it makes sense for the characters and the time and place in question for sure.
On the Kamchatka Peninsula, how I got that right, I don't know, but I did. I'll take that and run with it. It's fighting aplenty as the Autobots are meeting heavy Decepticon resistance. Then, Scorponok appears in the sky over the peninsula, patiently awaiting the arrival of Fortress, who he is waiting to come help the Autobots as, well, as Scorponok puts it himself, if they get in trouble without Chrome Dome, Fortress will come. We then head back to Athenia, the narrator saying, "Meanwhile, Fortress was trying to complete the last operation on Spike." We then cut to RC in the control room, who basically blares out, with superpowers? Towards Fortress. And then Fortress continues the conversation by saying, "The only way to remove the shrapnel from Spike's artery is by using telekinesis."
No, man, I mean, we've come a long way from, like, Ratchet and... you know, you used to have to do it the old-fashioned way, and now it's just like, no, I'll fix him with the power of my mind. And it's like, are you sure? Are you sure this is a good idea? Like, this does not seem like, you know, I'm sure there are other ways of resolving this problem, but okay, sure.
It's like, I appreciate, like, medical technology in this universe has probably come on a long way since season 2. But even at this point, the idea of transferring Spike's consciousness into another Autobot body while his body is healing to try and sort it out properly, even that sounds more logical of a thing to do than this.
Yeah, it is kind of, I don't know, I guess again it's like it's the writer's thing of like, well, we have to have one of the headmasters fix this, and we don't have like a kind of, you know, a Ratchet or First Aid equivalence, and it's like, hey, we've not done a like telekinesis / telepathy thing in like a hot minute, so let's continue to lean into that. But it's very much a kind of it feels a lot like a fix-all for everything in this series of just like, haha, I'll use my mind powers. It's like, cool, okay, go for it.
But we do come to find out there is a consequence of Fortress doing this, because Chrome Dome then adds, but you'll be unable to use it in battle against Scorponok, that being his sort of telekinesis or powers in general. And then Fortress goes, I know, but telekinesis is the only way to save Spike. So, again, Andy, the stakes are being raised up a bit more here now of, okay, well, want to help our really, close human friend, but then we're weaker in battle and we're already a bit under the cosh, are we sure about this?
Yeah, and I suppose, that's kind of like the back and forth on this is that, it's also like a blocker to just kind of like Fortress uses his full powers and wins, so it's a useful device there, because as we had mentioned, this is not the final episode, even though it feels like it's maybe going to be for a hot second or two later on. So you can't have an absolute victory, so maybe this is all serving towards that.
With Scorponok now heading for Earth, Fortress puts his Planet Master-born psychic powers to work. We see him telekinetically purge, as the TF Wiki so eloquently put it, the shrapnel from Spike's body. By literally obliterating the bit of shrapnel inside his body. Doesn't, necessarily remove it delicately, just evaporates it.
I mean, I have questions, because, surely if you've got, a severed artery, just, removing the thing that is in it is not gonna make the problem worse. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm certainly not a telekinesis doctor. But I'm pretty sure, if somebody has, something in their artery and that has, severed it, and you just take that thing out, blood loss is an issue. But hey,
I remember playing the game, what was it called, Trauma Sensor on the Nintendo Wii. I remember how bad blood loss was.
Yeah. I mean, I've also played Surgeon Simulator.
There you go.
Yeah, all goes horribly wrong. But thankfully, the diagram was here to show us that everything was fine. Which, I mean, I really enjoyed that. That was taking me back to my childhood of just 1980s Betamax tapes in classrooms of just okay, class, we've got a video today, and I was oh great, and it's I'm gonna show you how the human body works, and it's just a lot of those very 80s animated diagrams of just this is the blood flow through the artery, when there's a blockage, this is what happens, and you get all the arrows and stuff, and it's just this is another little not quite an educational moment, because it's this is how telekinesis works, kids. But
good luck learning that.
But no, I appreciated the use of a diagram at least. It feels like they got a feel for it. Just actually, drawing diagrams is fun. We should do this more in this show.
So now, with that process completed, as mentioned, Fortress's energy is depleted. And I imagine probably having the power to make that diagram work as well didn't help. But either way now, it means Fortress can't use the Master Sword. Stuck on Athenia and feeling just utterly useless and guilt-ridden, Chrondome realizes the key to winning the day. By continuing Highbrow's work, quote-unquote. He must discover the secret of Scorponok's long-searched-for weakness. Or, as he says, Andy, he'll try.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good start. Is trying. I mean, it is kind of hilarious how everyone has seemingly kind of forgotten about this. This was the most important thing, and the very obvious most important thing of just well, if you find out your rival's weakness, then you can defeat them. And it's oh yeah, we were doing that whole research thing, weren't we? We should probably knuckle down on that a little bit. It's yes, should probably have been doing this last episode as well. I mean, to be fair, the Headmasters were doing important work, killing Galvatron, so I suppose a day off scanning through the subtitles to find out what Scorponok's weakness is was fair. But yeah, you'd have thought they might have gotten back to it a little bit quicker.
And of course, he can't do this alone, so he has the very... I was going to say very capable, I'm going to change that to he has the help, quote-unquote, of Daniel and Wheelie. Yeah. And they're focusing.
Go on. They were so useful last time around when when they were trying this, and they were just complaining the whole time. So yeah, why not just use them again?
But they have a little bit of a helping hand here, because Highbrow conveniently left a giant bit of paper when you compare it to the size of Daniel when he holds it a few moments later, which is a little note saying, "I think there's a connection between the head and the body. That's how we'll figure out what the weakness is." To which my initial thought was, how does that help?
I mean, yeah, you have perhaps stated the most obvious thing. I mean, especially they're headmasters. I mean, because they are headmasters as well. It's not even Scorponok is the only headmaster, and they're how does this dark magic work? It's like you literally have the same basic biological makeup. Like, you would know the importance of the link between head and body. I mean, to be fair, even if you're not a headmaster, like, that's a pretty much a given. Like, yes, heads are important, and the interaction with bodies equally so. So, like, thanks Highbrow.
We then cut back to Earth, where we see that the battle is getting a heck of a lot worse for the Autobots. But Scorponok gets his wish, because Battleship Maximus has arrived. Scorponok transforms into robot mode to quite literally just throw around the energy-deprived Battleship Maximus. Scorponok saying, quote-unquote, "Fortress, today is the day I'll take your life. Away you go!" As he then chucks the battleship into a ravine. Two ravines in 2 episodes, Andy, you know?
They clearly, somebody had a word with the writers, like, you're missing your ravine quota. You need to wrap this up. Like, right, okay, every episode will have a ravine from now on. But yeah, again, this was just like a pretty. This was maybe not the best animated moment in this episode, but I just enjoyed the simplicity of Scorponok just picking up Fortress and just chucking him in battleship mode. It's just like, this is kind of quite satisfying. I like this.
Sometimes you need to be reminded that the simplest things are sometimes the most effective.
Yeah, exactly.
We then see footage of Chrome Dome, Daniel and Wheelie still trying to find the answer. There's Fortress almost in a meditative state, trying to regain the power to activate the Master Sword, to no avail. Then we hear Chrome Dome say the words, "That's where it is! We did it! Scorponok's weak point is the Decepticon symbol on his chest!" And I had a moment of deja vu, Andy, because I thought, I'm sure I've seen that subtitle before.
Yeah, that's actually how Chrome Dome found out. He was just like scrubbing through all the SRT subtitle files, and he's just like, haha, I found it. But yeah, finally, yeah, we've been sat on this information for such a long time. It felt weirdly cathartic to finally get up to that point, because it's just like, I feel like I've known something that I shouldn't have done for so long, but now we're all on the same page. We all know what's going on. Scorponok's weak point is really dumb. Like, why would you have it there? But you know, that's a mechanical build issue that you know, maybe Scorponok 2 will resolve.
But the thing is Scorponok designed the transector.
Yeah. I mean, that must have been like the Friday afternoon bit of just like, oh, what do I do about this? And it's like, oh, whatever, it'll be fine. Like, nobody's going to hit me in the chest. I mean, you know, that's not going to happen.
Or do you think it's one of those things where, like, he designed it a really long time ago and had these blueprints for ages, and it wasn't until he built it he suddenly thought, damn, I never changed where the weak spot was, did I?
Yeah. This is like when you build a thing with Lego and you're just missing a bit at the end, and it's fine. It'll do. It'll do. Good enough.
It's not complete, but it'll do. Then RC comes running into the room and says they all need help on Earth now. But then Chrome Dome tells her the good news, and there was a part of me that thought, Chrome Dome, you dare try and have a moment with RC now. You dare. But her concern, quite frankly, but that doesn't happen, I should clarify, but her main concern is, how the heck are you going to get to Earth so quickly? Because the space bridge is gone. Remember that, everybody. That's all I'm going to say. We then see Scorponok hurling Battleship Maximus into the molten heart of a volcano. Then we see Chrome Dome driving through what looks like a wormhole with some lightning bolts. And I thought, this seems familiar. I'm sure we weren't meant to ever see this again, because I think, Andy, Chrome Dome somehow resurrected the space bridge and drove through it in its unstable form.
Yeah, I guess. Just, yeah, probably there's just like a circuit breaker somewhere that you just flip back on, and it's just like, yeah, it'll do, you know.
I'm not going to ask questions, but from a continuity point of view, I think if that is what it is meant to be, that's very, very inconsistent.
Yeah, well, it's also weird because so much was made of like the removal of the space bridges from the equation. Like, it was a very clear plot point to you know, circumvent this exact thing happening, and then clearly there's something like, oh, we need to get Chrome Dome from here to here really quickly, and we've removed the space bridges. How are we going to make this work? I'm surprised they didn't just go like, we'll just say the train bots are really fast and get them to do it or something. But I guess, yeah, this is as good as anything. We shall not question it. I'm sure it will never even be mentioned or clarified at any point in the future. But I'm sure the space bridge worked long enough. Like maybe if you just, maybe it's like if you have like, I don't know, a piece of electronics that overheats really quickly, or like the fan in your laptop has died, and it's like, well, you can run it for like 2 minutes just to check your email. Maybe that's what it is with the space bridge. Like if I just turn it on for like 30 seconds and use it and turn it off, that's fine. That'll be okay.
I honestly at this point would have just accepted Omega Supreme randomly showing up and going, I'll take you.
Yeah. I'm finally back from the Forest of Solitude, and just in time to give you a lift.
But anyway, we're now on Earth, Chrome Dome's arrived, and suddenly the opening theme to the show kicks in. And once again, Andy, we know, business is about to pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a sign of matters of great importance.
Because what Scorponok had failed to sort of keep in mind is that Fortress has the ability to absorb power. So he managed to recharge himself by absorbing some of the volcano's magma energy, if you will, re-energizing him, allowing him to shout in the Japanese dialogue, "Big Mode!" and then transform into Fortress Maximus. Mindwipe's reaction to this is quite amazing and quite special, to be perfectly frank. He literally shouts, quote unquote, "Oh no!" and then flies away with his fellow headmasters. Chrome Dome then motions to Fortress Maximus that the weak spot's at the symbol on his chest. Hit his chest! Get him in the chest! And then Fortress Maximus leaps into the air and basically just swats the gun out of Scorponok's hand and then just stabs Scorponok through the chest with the Master Sword, causing the Decepticon to topple into the volcano. And I literally thought, you have got to be kidding if this is how this all ends. And I'm just thinking, how is this possibly the end? And then, of course, a moment later, Scorponok just flies into the air out of the volcano. It's fine.
Yeah. I was having that same thought of also just like if getting buried under like buried under ice is bad, like what is falling into molten lava gonna do to you? And so yeah, I was all set for like I was literally just like, did we get this wrong? Is this actually, this was the moment I was like, did we get this wrong? Is this actually the final episode? And we've completely like messed up how many episodes there are of this series. And it's like, oh no, okay, he's kind of, well, he's not fine, but he's alive at least.
There was just that feeling in my brain of, a bunch of these episodes just like OVA, original video animations, and they weren't aired on TV? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, we're just going to have like a beach episode next. And then they have the Decepticon Culture Festival. All the classics. It's like, come to the 6-shot ninja cafe.
We get a mural of fat Galvatron.
Yeah, the Mindwipe haunted house, all the good stuff. This is why I should be allowed to write episodes of Transformers, by the way, folks. Again, I am available for commissions if anybody would like to make Headmasters Season 2, because I have all kinds of ideas that I need to unleash upon the world.
As the dust is settling, if you will, the episode concludes with the Autobots surmising that Scorponok must be badly damaged now. And if it weren't for Highbrow's theory, i.e. that, it's between the head and the body where there's, the weak spot. I'm not going to let that one go. But if it hadn't been for that theory, they may not have been able to crack the code. Then the headmasters sort of reconcile with each other, following Chrome Dome's earlier outburst in an emotional state and whatnot. And I assume that Wheelie is fine with this as well, Andy, because we don't get any resolution to that. So I half expect Wheelie's either just going to be an antagonistic little git towards him going forward, or we're just going to be fine.
Yeah. Maybe he's going to be the new antagonist now. Scorponok is injured. It's just like, haha, I was actually the true villain all along. Like, I'm going to become Fat Wheelie and
Wheelie, Emperor of Carnage.
Yeah, Emperor of something.
Emperor of rhyming slang. I don't know. And then the narrator finishes the episode by saying, "The battle has ended in a draw," which I'd argue is not the case. But Scorponok, Emperor of Dread, will not give up that easily. He will undoubtedly come back to destroy the Earth and the Autobots. Fight, Autobots! Protect the green planet! And then the episode ends. This has been quite a ride of an episode, Andy. I mean, even counting in the last episode as well, episode 25. I'm kind of happy in hindsight we did talk about these episodes individually because there is so much that happens in each. But this episode as well, a really great follow-up to episode 25 after Galvatron's death and sort of sowing seeds for various things. That said, though, with the amount of sort of plot elements that were introduced in episode 25 compared to this in episode 26, it does kind of make you wonder what's the next direction now. Because based on how this episode ends, you just assumed Scorponok will put a plaster on his chest and he'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I am really interested to see what they do with that because, yeah, like the intimation is that Scorponok is alive but probably in bad shape because he's been hit in his weak spot. Like, you assume that he'll need some time to, recuperate. And maybe he could just fix it with telekinesis. I mean, now that we know that's a thing, like, maybe he can just fix it with his mind. But yeah, like, I mean, this is why, I talked about kind of, last week's episode felt like a penultimate episode. This felt like a final episode for a little while there. And I mean, the thing that I've just realized literally, like, while we've been talking is, like, in terms of episode counts, like, for a typical Japanese show, episode 25 and 26 would be the final 2 episodes in a broadcast run. So this is probably, like, the end to an arc, at least, where, like, this is sort of an end point where, I mean, maybe we'll get into the notes where, like, it took a break for a week or something, because this feels like a point where, this feels like a bit of a stopping point where you could have, like, a week off, effectively, and then maybe come back and be like, okay, well, time has moved on, here's what's happening next. But yeah, like, it is a really curious place, because the death of Galvatron, like, is a massive seismic moment in the series that feels like a sort of, not a final ending to things, but like a big step towards ending everything. And then finding Scorponok's weak point is also like a massive step towards ending things. But like, we're kind of in a position, like, this is almost like, I don't know, like a football analogy incoming, like you're 3-0 down, suddenly you've scored a couple of goals, and suddenly the Autobots are like 3-2 with like 5 minutes left, and it's like, oh, this could all turn around now, because suddenly the momentum has shifted massively in a very short period of time. And it is kind of compelling, because this feels like a moment where all of the stakes have changed in terms of like who's on the front foot and who is not, because the Decepticons are in kind of bad shape all of a sudden, because they've lost Galvatron. Scorponok is probably laid up for a bit. It's like, what do they do here, and what do the Autobots do to like capitalize on this momentum? And so that's like a pretty interesting place for us to leave things for the remainder of the series.
Yeah, and I think that's a good opportunity then to sort of move on to the TF Wiki notes, because one assumes we may get a few elaboration of details on some of these. Although earlier episodes have laid the seeds for it, it is this episode which makes the viewer aware that Chrome Dome bears a vicious enmity towards Sixshot. Although this episode only specifically mentions the death of Ultra Magnus, recall that Sixshot was also responsible for killing Chrome Dome's best friend Abel in the episode Terror: The Six Shadows. Which is a fair point, I'd not actually factored that in. Unfortunately for Chrome Dome, this is a tease. Unfortunately for Chrome Dome, this is not the last time one of his friends will lose his life to Sixshot.
Oh my goodness.
Oh god, alright. Well, I'm not going to read any more than that, but flip it heck.
No, that's a tantalizing
That's a tease. The Headmasters' psychic powers were properly established in the episode Cybertron is in Grave Danger Part 2. This is the first and only time that powers beyond telepathy are demonstrated.
Cool.
It was literally created for this episode.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing. I'm starting to think, like, could Fortress not have, like, fixed Ultra Magnus with his mind? Like, could he not have saved a lot of people this way? But anyway.
The long-standing mystery of Scorponok's weak spot first arose, naturally, in Find Scorponok's Weak Spot. Tied into this, in both Fight to the Death on Planet Beehive and Mystery of the Space Pirate Ship, Scorponok took slashes to his chest and immediately retreated from battle. Now we know why, because the weak spot was where he had been hit. Which I think we pointed out as well after that subtitle appeared on screen, that we noticed that as well. So it's nice to see there was that little continuity through line there.
Yeah. And that second one was a very clear, like, nods to the audience of just, like, you can join the dots on this, because it was immediately after talking, like, where's his weak spot, then he gets slashed, and it very clearly recoils from that moment in a very sort of exaggerated way to be like, take note of this. Which unfortunately the Autobot Headmasters did not, because maybe they could have like been like, that was an interesting, like, you know, but post-match analysis might have fixed that. But anyway.
Continuity errors. When Chrome Dome heads to Earth to spread word of Scorponok's weak spot, RC informs him that he can't use the space bridge, obvious enough given it was destroyed in the episode Daniel faces his biggest crisis ever. Chrome Dome, however, claims he will find a way, quote unquote, and is next seen in mid-transit to Earth, flying through what appears to be, for all intents and purposes, a space bridge tunnel. What the hell? So I'm glad they picked up on that as well. Trivia notes. All the major plot threads established since Galvatron's return in Return of the Immortal Emperor have been wound up over the last few episodes, culminating in this episode representing the end of the second story arc in Transformers Headmasters, and setting the stage for the third and final arc beginning in the next episode.
Yeah, there we go.
The dub version of this episode is downright hilarious. Most of the mimetic quotes spawned by the Omni Productions dub originate from this episode. You'd think that Spike, a man that's been around Transformers and their battles for 27 years now, would know better than to walk into the middle of the fight between any two of them, let alone ones as big as Trypticon and Metroplex, but apparently not. Especially stupid as he yells out, "Look out!"
Yeah, like listen to your own advice, Spike.
This episode is the second episode to feature an insert song which plays as Chrome Dome joined the battle. Now, is there any note about what this insert song is? That's what I want to know. It doesn't appear to be, so I'm guessing that's not noted anywhere. Yeah. So we shall have to pass on that. Apologies, folks. Then, foreign localization. In Mandarin, actually, you know what? This episode's got a good title. In Mandarin, the title was A Crushing Defeat on Emperor of Terror.
Yeah, that's very good.
In Russian, the episode was called The Quest for Survival, which I think works, actually, in terms of the context of what happens.
Yeah, I guess so.
In Italian, Lord Scorponok's weak spot.
Okay. What did they? I mean, I guess they just called the find Scorponok's weak spot point that, and then this sort of squares that circle. But
perhaps. On the Shout Factory subtitle, which is the American DVD, not the one we're referring to, episode was also called I Risk My Life for Earth. Then there's a few additional notes here. The review of the last episode shown before the title card is omitted, which I'm pretty sure that was the case on ours as well, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Both Pit and Inferno are used as euphemisms for hell. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. That came up in the last episode, and I forgot what that note was.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah. Spark is used in place of the word life, and at one point, Carly calls Spike in one line of dialogue, Sprite.
just thinking about the drink Sprite and Spike at the same time. It just like got mixed together in her head.
Then the Omni Productions dub. The episode title was Life Can Be Sacrificed for Peace on Earth.
I kind of like that.
There's also an additional note here. The battle against Scorponok is described as happening in the Kanto Prefecture.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
And that concludes those notes. So I guess, Andy, before we begin to wrap up this edition of the podcast, any final thoughts or notes regarding this episode specifically that you may have?
No, I don't think so. It's it makes sense now. It's confirmed this was basically like the season finale, effectively, of the arc finale, rather. Because it very much had that vibe to it, and I'm genuinely curious to see what it's going to do with its remaining episodes now. Because like I say, a lot has changed in a very short space of time in terms of episodes. I'm continue to be here for this series. Like, it's kind of surprising the directions and the lengths to which it has gone. And now we know more characters are going to die as well. So like all bets are off, because even I don't know. I knew what was coming with Galvatron, but now I'm in the dark and will hopefully remain so that I can be, well, as I say, surprised until we get to the episode called like Character X dies here or whatever. But,
Well, you know what? Let's talk about next time then, because we'll be discussing episodes 27 and 28 of Transformers Headmasters, which, per the TF Wiki, Andy, have the following episode titles, which, you know what? Okay, I was not expecting this. It's a two-parter, Andy. That's worked out quite well.
Nice.
The title, per the TF Wiki, which may differ in our subtitle track for all I know, is simply Miraculous Warriors, Target Masters, Parts 1 and 2.
Ooh, we get some Target Masters. Okay.
Apparently. So I'm very unfamiliar with the Target Masters in general, so this is going to be like a first-time thing for me, as it were. So looking forward to seeing how this progresses.
Yeah, well, I'm very interested to see how they do that as well, because it's like, I mean, the toys were like a mix of like brand new, but also you had like, Cup became a Target Master, like Cyclonus became a Target Master. Like, I'm interested to see whether, I mean, we've not seen Cup in quite a while. Like, didn't he go off on like the?
He went on the Rodimus mission, didn't he?
Yeah, Vision Quest. I mean, I think there was a Hot Rod Target Master. So yeah, I know there's a lot of opportunities,
because it was Hot Rod, Blur, and Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think it was those guys. Yeah, because Blur was also a Target Master. So maybe that's what they're gonna do here. I don't know.
Oh well, we're going to have to wait a few weeks now before we can see that. Or, spoiler, folks, in our recording timeline, it's about a month. So
yeah, it's god damn it. But we'll hopefully it'll be worth the wait, and we don't end up with like Target Master Daniel with his light gun again.
I'm very curious to see how this goes. Again, I'm not familiar with the Target Masters, so a lot of intrigue for me there, and you're already excited about this, I can tell. So
yeah, no, I'm really interested to see, because there are several directions they could go with this, and so I'm very interested to see what they do with it, and how well they can sell these toys to us.
And also, pure luck, it's a two-parter. Well, I assume two-parter. It could be a three-parter for all I know, but we have a part 1 and 2.
Yeah, no, I suspect it'll be a twofer.
There we go. Well, folks, on that note, thank you very much for listening and or watching, be you in audio-only form or on the video version on YouTube. As mentioned at the top of the show, we'll be back within about 2 weeks' time or so from the date of this episode publishing with our next episode, which we know, like we say, we've got a part 1 and 2, so we're going to be in for a grand old time by the look of it. Andy, any additional closing thoughts before we wrap up today?
No, I'm just going to go and start my doctorate in telekinesis surgery to forward the health of mankind.
There we go. In the meantime, I guess I'll try to convince people not to run out in the middle of a Transformers battle.
Yeah, that should have been like the classic like 80s cartoon like sort of PSA at the end of just like Spike being like, you may have seen me run into the middle of a battle. Like, kids, don't do this. Like, it's bad for you. Like, make sure you look both ways before you run into a Transformers battle.
Can you imagine Spike's being interviewed in like a TV interview somewhere, and someone, or a panel at a Comic-Con, imagine it. And someone goes, so what's like a big lesson or a big takeaway that you could tell people, like offering some advice if they ever have to deal with Transformers? And he just goes, when an Autobot tells you to stay away from a battle, don't run out trying to offer help.
Yeah.
It may result in you getting shrapnel when lodged in your artery and telekinesis having to be used to remove it.
Exactly. My other advice is real men don't cry.
And tough love with your family as well, you know.
Yeah, and then Spike gets cancelled. But anyway, we move on.
Do you know what? If anyone's going to get cancelled from the Transformers continuity from a human point of view, it would probably be Spike.
And he would absolutely deserve it. So, you know.
We've seen what you've done, Spike. We've seen. We remember season 2.
Exactly.
On that note, folks, thank you very much for listening and or watching. From myself, Jeremy Graves, from him, Andy Hanley, we've been Starscream's Ghost, a Transformers podcast. Until next time, take care and speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.